Karate friends, welcome to Classics in Color, your weekly dive into some of the ancient world's wackiest facts. I'm Mark Graves, and today we're going to be talking about women in the ancient world joking around with each other, flashing their genitals at people, and waving around penis cakes. It's going to be a blast. Check it out. So I'm mostly going to be focusing on Demeter, Baubo, and Iambe. So Demeter you probably know of, right? She's the goddess of fields, of fertility, of harvest and grain, all the good stuff that humans love. And she at one point lost her daughter Persephone. Now Hades stole her, but Demeter doesn't actually know that for a very long time, so she just thinks her daughter's lost and she's wandering the world extremely distraught looking for her. So at one point in this wandering, she ends up in the kingdom of Eleusis, and the royal family takes her into the palace. They try to be good hosts, as one should be, as an ancient Greek, but she's not really responding. She's not really having it, and she's just sort of sulking. And in these stories, either Iambe or Baubo is able to cheer her up, actually. So I'm going to talk about Iambe first. So they offer Demeter this fancy chair to sit down in, and no response, but Iambe then thinks, well, maybe she just wants this, so she offers her this little comfy stool, and Demeter does like that, so she sits down. She's still kind of sulking. They offer her food and drink. Not happening. But then Iambe, according to the Homeric hymn in honor of Demeter, what she basically does is until at last, dutiful Iambe, with ribaldry and many a jest, diverted the holy lady so that she smiled and laughed and became benevolent. Iambe, who ever since has found favor with her moods. So who is this Iambe? She's actually the daughter of Pan and Echo, which is a kind of strange combination and interesting. And she ends up as the servant of this king of Eleusis. And she also gives her name, Iambe, to Iambic poetry, which basically is poetry that is poking fun at people, making fun of them, making jokes. And there's actually kind of a dark side to her story. So in some versions, she actually ends up killing herself because she's in so much trouble for telling all these jokes, right? She told one too many, and she ends up killing herself, so that's very sad. And then Archilochus, who is the first actual historical human that we know of who wrote Iambic poetry, he also has a dark story. So he apparently wrote all these poems that were really nasty about his in-laws. I guess he didn't get along with them, but they were really nasty, and the family was just totally humiliated, and they ended up all killing themselves as well. So there's definitely a dark side to this humor in the Greek stories. So now I'm going to tell the version that emphasizes Baubo. So Baubo was also apparently a servant in this household, and as Demeter is sulking, we get a story that having received Demeter as a guest, they offer her a draught of wine and a meal. She declines to take it, being unwilling to drink on account of her mourning, but Baubo is deeply hurt and thinking she has been slighted, and thereupon uncovers her secret parts and exhibits them to the goddess. Demeter is pleased at the sight and now at last receives the draught, delighted with the spectacle. These are the secret mysteries of the Athenians. So this translation is a little bit stiff, but the idea is that she sort of is offended or pretends to be offended, and she lifts up her dress and gives Demeter a look at the goods, flashes her basically, and Demeter is just so startled and amused at this that she cheers up and she laughs a little bit. So Baubo gets the credit for cheering up this goddess. And he also references at the end the secret mysteries of the Athenians. So both Iambe and Baubo actually have an important role in Athenian cult and actually just Greek cult in general. So by cult, I should clarify, I just mean religion or ceremony, not what we think of as cult, right? So they did have a role probably in the Eleusinian mysteries, but that's a little more vague. I'm not going to get into that today. I'm going to focus on the Thesmophoria. So this was an extremely important and popular festival that took place actually across all of Greece. It wasn't limited to a particular city or a couple cities. Everywhere, which means that it must have most likely been very old to have been able to influence everybody at the same time, right? So it is in honor of Demeter. It takes place almost always in the fall, so it's associated with harvest, end of the year, and also planting and preparing for next year. And the interesting thing about it is it's exclusively for women. Only women participate in this. And they have a lot of different traditions that are associated with this. So one of them is that they sacrifice a bunch of piglets and they chop them all up into bits. And I've talked about this in my C-word video, the association between piglets actually and female genitals. So that's kind of interesting. And they take that chopped up pig bit and they throw that in their fields that they're going to use next year. So it's supposed to help the fertility of it. And along with that, they also mix up these cakes that they've made, either in the shape of serpents or in the shape of penises, phalluses. So there's definitely a humorous element to these cakes, but in the ancient world, phalluses are used much more generally just as a symbol of fertility and of good luck. So it's not the equivalent of a bachelorette party, right, with throwing penises around and being very scandalous and sexual, but it's also not totally that. Like there's a little bit of that in this, especially because another important tradition of all this was that you were supposed to joke around and especially make obscene jokes, sexual jokes, be teasing and poking fun and flashing people with your genitals. And we have a great account of this from Lucian. So he says that both many games and jokes are spoken. The women alone entering an amnesty are able to say whatever they want. And in fact, they then speak the most shameful things to one another. The priestesses, secretly approaching the women, advise something unspeakable in their ear about illicit love. All the women proclaim shameful and indecorous things to each other, holding up indecent male and female images. Now, can we take Lucian 100% seriously on this? Because he is a bit of a jokester and he does like to exaggerate. I think so. I think many scholars do think that this was kind of what they were up to for at least part of the festival, this joking around and these making obscene jokes. And it was a way for them to sort of let go of all the seriousness and responsibilities for a couple days and just joke around with their girlfriends in a sort of safe environment. And finally, we do have portrayals of Baubo all over the Greek world, and they are statues of her, but they're not of a whole person, right? They're just the bottom half of a person, and there's a face drawn on her stomach, basically. And I have one professor who thinks that part of the festivities was to draw a face kind of on that lower region around your genitals, and then maybe even like make it talk. I don't know if that's a thing. But clearly we do have these really weird and cool little images and statues of the goddess Baubo, and she was an important part of female life everywhere in ancient Greece. Thank you for checking out this video on female comics and comedy in the ancient world. Thank you, as always, to subscribers. Special thank you to patrons. I hope to see all of you again next week, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving in the meantime. Karate!